Well, for the first time, South Africa might have a coalition government. We've seen how troublesome coalitions have been in places like Nelson Mandela Bay as well as Tshwane. So what should the country expect if this does happen? When we've got public relations strategist Makosini Mkikwa joining me right now for that conversation. Makosini, one would say that South Africa has endured a PR nightmare this past week in terms of the way in which political leaders, may have actually missed opportunities to aggressively engage with community members ahead of the elections and perhaps even sway some to vote different come May 8th.
Yes, no, certainly, especially I'm sure you're talking about the issue of Alexandra, where I think that the mayor...
Beckerstyle as well.
Yes, but Johannesburg in particular, the mayor missed an opportunity to show that he's a legitimate leader of this city, and for him to decide not to go and instead blame the ANC, I think it was a missed opportunity. But President Ramaphosa took advantage of that situation, went to Alex and got a much better reception. I don't know what reception he would get in Marikana, but that we'll have to wait and see.
Well, it's very interesting that you speak about President Cyril Ramaphosa, because many analysts were coming out and saying they would have expected him to come out as the president of the country, right, to address the people. But it appears as though he came out as the president of the African National Congress, so utilizing, under the auspices of the African National Congress, and perhaps to sway some of those voters who were feeling maybe disgruntled with the Democratic Alliance to vote ANC come May 8th.
I think we'll have to make peace with the fact that whoever shall be the president of the Republic, now and tomorrow, whenever, that person is going to be a politician and is going to be coming from a political party. And this is election time. Campaigning is not an illegal act or something that is immoral or anything of the sort. You still have to engage the communities and explain to them why they should vote for your party. But I think if you look at the situation in Alexandra, that people are complaining about service delivery only a few weeks before an election, it could say they are not satisfied with the manifestos that they've seen, or they haven't been told, or they haven't been, informed well enough about those manifestos to know. Because in a situation like this, you just choose the party that is going to address your problems. Yeah. But that said, Alexandra, Soweto, or any other township you can think of are places that are forgotten by our leaders, are places that are forgotten by the media. The majority of South Africans live in townships and rural areas. How many news organizations have offices in townships, or even just bureaus, just a satellite office? None of that happens. All of them are based in the cities, in Johannesburg, Sandton, whatever, and other suburbs. So you realize that all of us are getting out of touch with the people who are in the townships. And to suggest that these people are happy and only somebody made them unhappy so that they could get on the streets and protest, it is really to insult them. They are not that stupid, if they are stupid at all. The leaders and all of us, and the media as well, we've forgotten about them.
Well, agencies have suggested that looks as though the ANC will take close to a two-thirds, so just under 60% in terms of the winnings come May 8th, and obviously looking at the EFF making significant progress as opposed to the local government elections, and also the Democratic Alliance is still managing to hold some form of grasp and power with that. Do you take into account that those statistics and analysis, which, I mean, these are predictions ultimately at the end of the day, and especially since you've mentioned the issue around people on the ground and how us as the media, I mean, my whole introduction, for example, was speaking about coalitions, but now when we're talking about people on the ground, are people on the ground actually interested in a coalition? Are we going to be seeing ourselves entering into a coalition, or are we just speculative at this moment?
Look, a coalition is possible, and it's likely in a province like Gauteng, right? Sometimes you can have a coalition even if you do have a simple majority, but just so that you use that opportunity to make sure that all the parties that have substantial representation are taking part in the running of the municipality, or taking part in the running of the province or nationally. Yeah. Nationally, I don't foresee that there could be a need for a coalition. The voter base nationally for the ANC is 60%, and Cyril Ramaphosa has managed to energize it. I'm not sure if he has energized it enough for ANC supporters to go out and vote, because when you see things like the the disruption of the launch of that, gangster state. Yeah, and all the things that people see that they're not happy with, it tends to make them apathetic and decide not to go out and vote. But if you look at a situation where you have opposition parties, particularly the EFF, go on social media and see, it has energized its base. And if all EFF supporters go out and vote, and all DA voters go out and vote, IFP and all opposition parties go out and vote, and juxtapose that with ANC supporters or voters who are unhappy about 1, 2, or 3 allegations of corruption and all that, and they decide, I'm not going to vote, you may actually find the ANC having to co-opt smaller parties in order to govern, not because it has lost support, but because it did not energize its support base to go out and vote.
More about that as well, because Amnesty International also says that worsening inequality in the country really is an integral part and is an important contributing factor to increasing protests. Now, the organization says people don't feel anyone is listening to them. Let's have a listen.
The inequality in our country is literally getting worse as opposed to better, and it is also people feeling that they're not listened to year after year after year after year. Before 1994, they weren't listened to because that is the way that the government of those days was structured, and now they still don't feel listened to, and they will tell our researchers on the ground that the reason they burn things, the reason they take the action they do, is because it's the only way they feel they get attention, maybe, and someone might come and see them. And so it is that they're tired of corruption, but I think it's also that they're tired of surviving day to day for things that the government should be supplying and should be giving, as part of running the country, and that they're just sick and tired of it. And I think a lot of people are feeling that they're now expected to vote, but what are they voting for? And that's what is fueling all of this.
Well, to unpack this part, I'm joined as well by Dula Oma Institute Director Jaap de Visser from Cape Town. And of course, we're still continuing that conversation as well with public relations strategist Makosini Mkikwa. But I would like to bring you into that, Jaap. Thanks a lot for joining us on Newsnight this evening. People are feeling more and more apathetic and feeling as though they're not being listened to, and perhaps are using this run-up to the election, the 24 days, to actually voice their grievances and maybe even hold the state at ransom.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for having me on your show. And I think the discussion shows very clearly that these could very well be one of the most important elections that we're having since 1994, with lots of new developments, new upcoming parties. We have a history of cities being governed by coalitions or parties in opposition to the ANC. And I think a lot of unhappiness on the ground, and we're seeing that coming through in the recent spate of service delivery protests, particularly in the big cities. So by all accounts, a very important election lies ahead.
Well, I mean, a very important election lies ahead, and one may say that an election, though, that is marred by various issues that were not addressed during the previous dispensation, and issues that may even be negated within the last 9 years and now are rearing their ugly heads. And unfortunately, whoever that needs to govern must actually literally clean up before they actually get the state into full force and running capacity.
It's a practical thing. There's a road from Johannesburg to Pretoria. On your left, you see Sandton. And with all the skyscrapers that are going up all the day, shiny buildings. And just on the other side, it's squalor. It's like you're in Kinshasa. Okay? So people see this. It's practical for them. And you ask yourself, if you take a drive around Alexandra and you look back at what substantially has changed in the past 25 years in Alexandra. We live in suburbs, we work in suburbs. If you go to the township, you'll find that there could be a burst pipe spewing raw sewage for weeks on end. But if it happens on the other side...
Oh, for a day.
It's not even a day. There will be tweets, there will be phone calls and everything, and that thing will be sorted out. So you do nothing but to leave the poor people of Alexandra with no choice, that in order for you to listen to them, they must bend something. Because when they bend, the media is there, politicians are there. So if you engage them, before anything happens, actually, we need to be told by the media that people of Alexandra are not happy, instead of be told by the media that now they are burning tires. I think that they are getting a raw deal, and I think that it's a pity that political parties have not seized an opportunity that you are giving them as the media, that come and debate these issues. Because how does it help for Herman Mashaba to say it's the fault of the ANC, they governed for all this time, and President Ramaphosa says, no, but all these things can be sorted out.
Very quickly.
It can be sorted out by the mayor of Johannesburg. Now, you ask yourself is, what stops them? Musi Maimane, Julius Malema, debating the president, and even talking about the practical things that are happening in Alexandra and other places. Because all of them, by the way, not one of them, even those who claim to be radical socialists, they don't stay in Alexandra. They choose to stay in Sandton.
Now you made me go to a next question. And Yap, I want to bring you into this one. We're speaking about the disparities and actually having to use a practical example from Sandton City and looking over, and there's Alexandra. And we're talking about how our leaders are not necessarily putting enough emphasis and perhaps even enough tenacity in eradicating some of those literally economic injustices. Then I have to ask, do black lives actually matter in this country? Because if issues can be addressed in Sandton less than half a day, and we cannot address those issues in the townships, in the rural areas, because we can say it nicely as media, in the townships, in the rural areas, but who stays in the townships, in the rural areas? Those are black people. So I have to ask, do black lives matter in this country? Hello, Yop, can you hear me? Okay, it appears as though Yop cannot hear me right now, but I have to ask him.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, so I was just asking around the issue around Black Lives Mattering. Do Black Lives matter in this country?
Well, I think it's a very important question that you're asking, and very clearly we're seeing huge failures on the part of a government when it comes to addressing the legacy of the past. And I think the kind of examples that you've mentioned, the kind of examples that we refer to, speak to very serious failures, particularly at local government level. And of course, these are not local government elections, but national and provincial government, who we are about to elect now, play an extremely important role in supporting local government, funding parts of local government, and also overseeing local government and intervening when things go wrong. And we're seeing these failures of municipalities in addressing infrastructure backlogs and addressing the rampant and gaping inequality within municipalities that was referred to earlier. And we're even seeing municipalities going into a downright collapse, particularly in our rural areas. So the question then becomes, what is the role of national and provincial governments? When are they supposed to step in? When are they supposed to address corruption and mismanagement and failures at local government level? And I think over the past years we've seen a sense of communities feeling neglected, feeling that their municipalities are failing them, and that the provincial government and the national government are not doing enough to intervene and to address this. And I think this is partly what this election is about.
Well, from you to you, Makosini, and I'm going to ask this question because we've got an ENCA election bus that goes around the country and just really try to get the sentiments around voter participation, voter apathy. And my colleagues were in Guyana, and they were speaking about the water scarcity in Guyana, which is absolutely unacceptable, and how there has not been water and available water for a long time, for months on end. And then obviously going over to Toyando, where many of the people have to clean up after this VBS scandal, and many of them are living as a result of the effects. But again, we can look at local government, but ultimately, who are the people at local government in that place?
Yes. Look, I think that's where you see the impact of corruption being practical and mean. to people. Because if you go through the books of those municipalities or the provincial government or whoever, you'll find that money was set aside for work to be done.
Yeah.
But work was not done. And this is
But
where...
why?
Yeah.
Then what is it? Is it an issue of politics of the stomach, where we're thinking for our stomach and neglecting the bigger cause, which is the people and the communities that we're supposed to represent? Is it an issue of having felt as though I'm entitled to this because I fought for this freedom, so therefore I'm entitled to benefit from this freedom? Why is it that we're missing these opportunities to be an amazing country?
Let me tell you where the problem is. You have politicians that are worried about themselves and their stomachs. They don't care so much about our people. And also you have the media that has reduced itself to the role of being messenger for politicians. Let me make you an example. Not long ago, I was watching television and I heard that, in the Free State, they were going to revamp the late Winnie Madikizela Mandela's house in Brandfort to the tune of 3 million rands. And I sat in my house and I thought to myself, I could build that house for 300,000 rands. Why does it cost 3 million rands to refurbish it? And the journalist who was actually interviewing the politician never asked that question. But let's say he missed an opportunity to ask the question. Why don't you follow that project as the media? You reported on it, so you own that story, that this is going to happen. So you need to follow it. And when you do that, you give the officials an incentive to do their work because it is going to be shown on television that work is actually being done. But instead what the media does, they'll report that this government department is going to spend 80 million rands on small businesses. But you don't follow to see which of those small businesses that are benefiting. So whether that money goes to what it's intended for or not, you do not know as a journalist yourself, but you've told the people
that it's going to happen.
That is going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, only when people are unhappy because that did not happen, again, you run when they're banning something, and it's like you didn't know anything about it. I'm saying if we have politicians that are conscious about serving people, and you have a media that is also conscious about making sure that the resources of the country are spent where they are supposed to be spent, we will be forever dealing with these problems. Because, if no one is shining the spotlight, people are going to steal. But if you shine the spotlight and actually have a situation where you give some credit or some kudos, but some attention to those municipalities where things are happening right, where money is spent, where it's supposed to be spent, I think the media could play that positive role. I don't know why they're not playing it.
Well, it almost sounds as though we need to go back to basics. In other words, what is the role of politicians? What is the role of politics in any country, not only in South Africa, but more especially in South Africa, given the fact that we're going into elections? But also, what is the role of the media? Is the role of the media to be reactionary to stories and to chase at the stories and to chase at the hype and breaking news stories? Or is the role of the media really to represent the needs of the people and shine the spotlight? So now you've gone and challenged me in terms of, the role of the media. And for you, we're going into an election season. We were just speaking with Makosini about, the possibilities of a coalition. What are your views on that? Do you think that we're going to be entering into a coalition? Certainly, Gauteng is a much contested province, but looking at the greater South African landscape, what are your views on that?
I will leave the predictions as to whether or not we will need coalitions to those who know much more about it than I do. What I do want to say is that our electoral system, the way we run our elections, essentially sets us up for the possibility of coalitions. We don't have a winner-takes-it-all electoral system. We have an electoral system that is more a bit of an Oprah Winfrey system where everybody gets some. So the outcome may be fragmented. And it is only because we have a very powerful ANC that has always booked major victories that we've had majority parties throughout the system. But the electoral system doesn't guarantee that. So we may see that coalitions are on the increase in the upcoming elections or even later. And I think what's important is that political parties are slowly but surely starting to get used to the possibility of having to govern in a coalition setting, because that requires a different style of leadership because coalitions are now sort of renowned for being unstable and for being bad for governance, which I think is an irrelevant statement to make, because at some point they may become inevitable, and then it is up to political parties to become better attuned to the possibility of governing in a coalition, and what type of preparation, what type of partnership and what type of compromise that needs to still enable that particular government to deliver proper services. And I think we are slowly entering into that era.
Well, slowly entering into that area, but as we wrap off, Makosini, entering in that era also means that we need to start practicing political maturity. Yes. And I don't necessarily know if South Africa, 25 years into our democracy, well, we're 25 years old, but are we mature 25-year-olds that will be able to actually go into a coalition with the full understanding of the political landscape and the willingness to actually compromise instead of calling people out and changing over mayors whenever we feel like it?
You know, we have a functioning coalition government in South Africa. It's the national government. The ANC has two factions that are so disparate. There could be two separate political parties. I think there's more in common between Cyril Ramaphosa and Mmusi Maimane than there is between Cyril Ramaphosa and Magashule, for example. But the two are working together because they understand that what is for the good of the ANC is that they must work together. Yeah. So if all the political parties that will be in a coalition understand that it is for the good of the country, they will find a way of working together. But if they are concerned about themselves and they're concerned only about their parties, yes, they will be squabbling to the point that the government becomes dysfunctional and that you have to call snap election. I just hope that we will not get to that point. I do think, though, that under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, not because I like him, because he is the kind of leader who is able to bring people together. He can speak many languages. His nature, I mean, as an organizer, he started a trade union. He is someone, I think, has the capability of holding a coalition government together if we should reach that point.
Well, gentlemen, thanks a lot for joining us this evening. Insightful conversation, really, about the issues around coalitions. Could we be possibly entering into a coalition government come May 8th or after the 8th of May? We had different predictions and also analytical perspectives around the role of the media and even the role of politicians. Yop Tefesa as well as Makosini Mkikwa joining me for that conversation. Well, still to